Well, good morning here. I'm just going to give you an idea of how to get ready for Essay 1, kind of responding to a couple of emails I had. One of them, I'm going to get over to this screen here, was about where do you find the doctors? If you go to Essay 1, Prompt 1, you'll find all of the doctors here. The main ones: Marcus Conant, Alvin Friedman Keene, the dermatologist, gay doctors whose patients came to them for STDs, etc., etc. And these are all really good doctors to research. And the question you have in mind is, what about their training, their background, their professional life, and in some cases, even their friends put them in a position to be the first to understand the significance of the new illnesses, which would, because of them, be understood as the epidemic we know as AIDS. One of the ones I'm going to show you, Sandra Ford, is one of my favorite because it's just unusual. She had kind of a off-the-radar job at the CDC, handling all of the requests for aerosolized pentamidine, which was used to treat pneumocystis carinii pneumonia almost universally following chemotherapy from a cancer, which left the patient's immune systems flattened out and with no functional immunity. Then these patients started getting pneumocystis. What caught her eye at the CDC was that none of them, that is, none of the doctor's requests for the drug that she controlled for the whole country, none of those requests mentioned a cancer. And it's really kind of comical to read her. And the way you get a feeling for what about her and her position, I've actually explained a pretty good amount of it here, is you go into, let's see if I can do this. You go in, if it's an ebook, you can search it electronically. I don't have a picture of a paper copy up here, but just look in the index. You'll find all the entries you need. And you just follow her around. You should see her on page 54. You see her on page 61, 80, 116. Go a little bit further if you want. And if you read those 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraph snippets of her in action, you'll get an idea of why her unusual job gave her a front row seat to see this newly emerging epidemic. And you would do the same with any of the others. If you look at Dr. Gottlieb, read all of the things about him. If I spell his name correctly, read everything about Dr. Michael Gottlieb. Not only is he famous for basically having the first publication on what we would know as AIDS on June 5th, 1981, but also his professional experience was just unusually good. He's an immunologist. He's connected with a major gay doctor in the Los Angeles area. A college friend is an official at the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health who knows an official at the CDC. And you look at that chain of connections and professional experience, and you realize that he was just in the right place to discover this disease before anybody else. But you have to read all of those things. So one of the places where people fall apart on these is that maybe they don't have time, or they just don't care to really do any more than they have to, is they reach into the book, grab the first quote, and say, I've got a quote, I'll write about Gottlieb. No, you have to read all of these places where Gottlieb is described and get a robust feel, and then narrow it down, because you have such a good feel, to a paragraph on those things that really made Gottlieb almost the person who had to discover AIDS, just because he was in the right place at the right time. So the point is, look up those doctors, or if you're using a disease like lymphoma, if you want to use prompt 2, the next one, look up, as I did with lymphoma. It's a little bit difficult to navigate here, but I think I can do it here without knocking things out. Maybe I've got to move around a little bit. Hold on a second. Move that one down. Yeah, there you go. And I think if I can get that window, you notice I've got all these references to lymphoma, probably 10 or 12 in the first 80 or so pages. And if you read around that, the last one's not quite on lymphoma, my mistake, but it's interesting to note that as early as what this is, probably 1981, the doctors had a clear idea that almost half of the healthy gay people in the Washington, D.C. area had the immunological footprint of AIDS. And this is really a couple of years before the virus was discovered. So that's the last note, but the other ones are all on a lymphoma. And it'd be a similar thing. You go into the book, if it's an ebook, and you look up lymphoma, and if it's the paper book copy, just go to the index. So that's the first thing. You've already done basically the collection, the reading. Now you're going to do the rereading. And then selection is when you get your topics in order. That is, Sandra Ford was the first to discover, or one of the first to see, what we now know as AIDS emerging from the landscape because. And then you explain, what about a professional position, the drug she controlled, the connection she had at the CDC. And you can do the same for any of them. I'm only asking you to do 3 of the major players. And in doing that, you'll show the academic skill of keeping a topic in mind. What about these people made them? And then getting the best understanding first from reading everything, and then critical reading, the best quotes to illustrate those characteristics. So that's the basic thing. And then another thing, in other words, you're going to spend some time researching. And it's not a lot. It's only like 3 items here, or if you go to the next prompt, then it's only really these 3 diseases would work. Or if you want to look at the microbial problems, toxoplasmosis, cryptosporidiosis, cryptococcosis, well, do those all in one paragraph because they all sort of fall under the same banner. But find out what was mysterious about those diseases, why they raised a red flag for the doctors. And I'll just mention that in virtually all of these, except maybe, pneumocystis and the 3 microbes down here, these are ambient microbes. It's like all of us are exposed to them, almost. And so to have people become ill, it points to something really wrong with their immune systems. All of these do. And so what you're doing here is you're looking into each one of these and answering that question, why these illnesses, diseases alerted to the doctors that something unusual and deadly was happening. And use the same thoroughness that I did a couple of slides ago with lymphadenopathy. Now, another thing people asked about, and I kind of brushed over this here, is that you have an introduction, 5 W's plus a thesis, and the body paragraphs follow any of these models. You can Google them. Point, P-I-E, topic, T-E-A, main idea, M-E-A-L. You get the idea. You start with a main idea that pretty much answers this question. You either illustrate with pie, you give examples with tea, you give examples with meal. So you bring in and weave those quotes into your discussion to show your critical reading skills. And then you provide either an explanation or analysis and, explain why these details were so important. Here's another model. You don't necessarily need to use it, but it's the same thing. Anyway, you're paragraphing, you have a strong idea. Well, first you've decided which 3 doctors or which 3 illnesses you're going to write about. And then you've got your 3 body paragraphs. You shape them with strong ideas, good support, that is quotes from the text, and that is required. You have to have shown your mastery of the book to do well in this essay. and then analysis. Standard paragraph. I think most of you have seen that. Once you have your body paragraphs in order, then you can write an introduction. When I say 5 W's plus a thesis, you've probably heard this: who, what, where, when, and why. It's a way of getting the basic information without getting tangled up in the discussion. So who are you writing about? Basically, Randy Shilts and the band played on what? Explores the early years of the AIDS epidemic as the mysterious disease slowly unfolded and spread like wildfire. Late 70s, early 80s. All right. That's my introductory statement. I've got the author, the title, the main idea of the book. Then I pivot to the next thing. If I'm using topic A, one of the main themes of the book is that Shilts introduces us to the first doctors. And why? Because of their, professions, their dedication, their networks. They became the first ones to understand the illness. That's it. So you got the author, the title, the book, the main idea, and then pivot to your theme. The doctors. Shilts gives us the backstory as to why they were the first to recognize this disease. Or, if you want, the illnesses. One of the themes of the book is that he explores how certain illnesses provided red flags which alerted the doctors. That's your introduction. You're done. Then you roll out those doctors, those illnesses. Try to get 1 or 2 well-integrated quotes to back up your topic in each paragraph, and then write a conclusion. After you've checked your essay, the introduction sets up the body paragraphs. The body paragraphs are focused, really hold together. Then put your paper down, come back to it, read it 3 or 4 times, just the body paragraphs, kick up some keywords and phrases, and roll them into a conclusion, maybe end with a kick. So summary and emphatic. I hope this gives you an idea of the shape. Roughly 5 pages, roughly 5 paragraphs. You got an intro and a conclusion and 3 paragraphs in the middle. I hope this helps you figure out a process, collection, selection, and then a shape, reflection, writing your essay. Feel free to email if you have any other questions.